So this is Colossians chapter 1, the scripture for February 14th. And Colossians is also a letter written by Paul. You'll notice a theme in this part of the New Testament, with the letters mostly being written by the Apostle Paul. That's not going to change anytime soon. A good part of the New Testament was written by Paul. Colossians was written to a church in Colossae, and it was written to correct some theological mischaracterizations of the identity and of the purpose of Jesus Christ. And before you think, well, guys, get your act together. Jesus is like a big deal. You need to know what he's doing. Before you think that, and you're right, like you need to know what Jesus is doing, and it's impossible to overstate the importance of the person and work of Jesus Christ for our faith. I want you to think about the mechanics of who exactly was Jesus Christ in terms of being God and human, and what exactly did he do? It wasn't until several hundred years after Christ that the church came up with the doctrine of the hypostatic union, which says that Jesus is both 100% God and 100% human at the same time. And this has some deep implications for who God is and for who we are as human beings. And so before you knock the Colossians, I think it's important to realize that we still have some of the same questions the Colossians have. So Paul, as usual, begins with a word of thanksgiving for the people he's writing to. And I think that this is a really good thing to note, that even if a church has theological issues, we can still be thankful for the work that they're doing. And vice versa, just because we're thankful for the work a church is doing doesn't mean they don't have theological issues. Both of these things can and often are true with churches, because all churches have issues of theology that they don't get 100% right. And all churches are doing work that we can be thankful for to some degree. So as we look further into this chapter, we see that Paul's definition of leading a worthy life includes several things. It includes bearing fruit. Your life needs to have outside impact, not just on yourself, but on the people you interact with. It involves growing in knowledge. You're not stagnating in what you know about your faith. It involves being made strong. Faith shouldn't make you weaker. It should make you stronger in the Lord and in your belief. It also involves preparing to endure. Faith is something that should allow you to be able to stand up against unbelief, and even if you don't know the answers, to endure what life throws at you. And finally, it involves giving thanks to God. If your faith doesn't end with thanksgiving as well as begin with thanksgiving, then it's not God who your faith is in, it's something else. These things are the cornerstone of our faith in Jesus Christ. If a Christian isn't developing in these ways, no matter how many other good things the Christian is doing, they're not living a worthy life in the Lord. But the good news is that there's always time to start over again. There's always time to look at these different aspects of living a life worthy of the calling of the Christian and to work on them and to entrust them to Jesus Christ. It's never too late to start. So the core of Paul's theology in this letter comes in this hymn to Christ's divinity that's found in verses 15 through 20. Now, the Jewish faith, as you might know if you're familiar with the Ten Commandments, prohibits any sort of graven image. And it's a strong pass on ever representing God as any sort of idol or any sort of image. This is why so few images of God exist, if at all, in Judaism. It's why when the Ark of the Covenant is made and the throne is made for the tabernacle and for the temple, no idol, no representation of God is sitting on it. It's empty, because to the Jewish faith, you can't see God. But Jesus is the image of God. If, in the words of the song in Les Miserables, if to see another person is to see the face of God, it's Jesus Christ's face who you're seeing. It's Jesus Christ who gives us the hope of glory, as Paul says later in this chapter. And Jesus Christ who we proclaim because he is before all things and he holds all things together. There's this idea in science about four forces. You know of the force of gravity. You probably know a little bit about the force of electromagnetism. There are two additional forces known as the weak force and the strong force that hold atoms together. And there's some theologians who think of Jesus Christ as the strong force. In him, all things hold together. I like that idea of Jesus integrating all things, even at the atomic level. So this hymn has what theologians call a high Christology. It really focuses and emphasizes on Jesus' divinity, Jesus' lordship, and Jesus' power. But it also claims that God is reconciling all things through Jesus Christ. It claims that God is reconciling all things, whether on heaven or on earth or under the earth. Do you hope for all of creation to be reconciled? Or is part of your hope tied into hoping that people suffer and go to hell for eternity? I wonder if, according to Paul, the hope of believers ought to be for full reconciliation one day, somehow, through Jesus Christ. That's all for Colossians 1. On Monday, the 17th of February, we'll be looking at Colossians chapter 2. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.